This idea of saved is a very completed sounding term. After all, it's like I'm saved. So that means I've arrived, it's over, it's done, it's complete. So that doesn't feel like, at least in our minds, in our hearts, like there's really a whole lot that we have to do. Not that we don't maybe have options and things we might want to do, but there's nothing we really have to do. Because after all, I'm already saved. We always want to figure out who's in and who's out. I can't tell you if there's a week that goes by when somebody doesn't call or email or text or something with a question that somehow is related to trying to figure out whether or not people are in or out. Stop that. I know a lot of people keep track of like where I'll say things like okay or this or that. Start keeping track of how many times I say stop that. Like knock it off. We get into so much trouble when we overstep our bounds. When we go beyond our, well, I used to call it pay grade. In order to explain salvation and being saved, whatever that means, I felt the Ruach showed me that it's all about understanding a relationship between salvation, faith, and works. That there's a relationship between those three things. Sin has a consequence that can bring harm, ruin, and loss, including loss of life. And so there's a preservation. In other words, have you ever seen in Scripture where it talks about the preserved ones of Israel? That verses are in there that talks about the idea of preserving a remnant. So he's keeping some aside for some reason. How does he do that? He preserves them from harm, ruin, and loss as a consequence of their sin. He did this with Judah when he had them go into captivity instead of wiping them out. He still preserved them. So we're going to hopefully, and we've done this in other teachings, totally change this whole idea of work being like a four-letter word. Oh, you're into works. I read the scripture. It seems like the guy who wrote the book and is in charge of this whole thing, he cares about what you do. We call that works. I'd rather stop using that word. Let's find a different word that says the same thing, because maybe you have, again, we call this Christianese terms. Christianity has taken a term. I'm not saying this to pick on them. They've taken a term, used it so consistently in one unique way that we no longer can use that word without thinking of it that way. He even allows us to become enslaved. And we are. We're so enslaved to our emotions and desires and our cravings and the world systems and sin and self-sovereignty and everything else. We're so enslaved. Just think about how much of your life you actually feel like you have choice. Think about how much of your life you feel like is already under someone else's control and authority, and you don't have a lot of choice. You just have to do what you have to do because you actually are enslaved. See, if you would get mad enough, you would actually make some changes. Because you are exactly where you tolerate being. Because whatever you don't tolerate, you know what you do? You change it. If something is intolerable, what do? You fix it. Change it, move on, do something different, because it's intolerable. You don't stay in the place called intolerable very long, but it's amazing what you can tolerate. Let's understand that we're looking at a process. Salvation is only a piece of that process. Not only meaning like it's not important, but it's a piece of the process, okay? And we have to understand that that process is going to be greatly affected by our understanding, and therefore our decisions based on our understanding of the relationship between salvation, faith, and works.